But again, just be you are going to need the right rings or mount. It's not yar. I see you laughing over there. I said you are. It's yar. It's yar. It's like you are. Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about the differences between a low power variable 1 to 6 setup like you see here with this Strike Eagle 1 to 6 or a magnifier and red dot combination like our Micro6x magnifier and our SPARC solar here. Now we are speaking generally in this case, so whatever we say for the low power variable side will apply to any 1 to 6 optic, not just the Strike Eagle. And same goes in this case here. We are speaking to the magnifier here, rather specifically the Micro6x, but it could be behind a Crossfire red dot, SPARC solar here, a UH1 holographic sight, or really any other sight like those. Now, both of these optic configurations are designed around versatility. They both have the ability to go all the way down to 1x. In the case of the low power variable, you can turn that down with the magnification ring, or in the case of a magnifier like our Micro6x, you would flip it to the side and use just the red dot. Then, of course, they both have the ability to shoot on 6 power. Again, low power variable, crank up the magnification ring, or in the case of the magnifier, flip the magnifier back in front of the red dot and shoot through the magnifier and red dot. Both these optic setups also have proven track records out in the field, in duty use, and really in just about every application imaginable. Ultimately, if you're somebody interested in outfitting your firearm for short to mid-distance engagements, either one of these options is going to be a good route for you. Now let's talk about some of their differences. First off, just setting these optics up on top of your rifle is a completely different process. When we talk about a red dot or holographic sight, we're going to need to get 2 separate optics, obviously the sight itself and then the magnifier. When we get these, we're going to want to make sure we have adequate space on top of the rail of our rifle. Most commonly, we'll see these on AR-15s or other similar carbines, which generally have enough space, but if you have other accessories mounted onto that top rail, then that may be a consideration you need to take into account. Also, various different red dots or holographic sights are oftentimes at different heights, or you may desire a different height than when it comes out of the box. Just make sure in that case that you have the magnifier set at the exact same height as well. So there may be a little playing around you have to do in order to get everything set up properly, but in that case, then you're ready to go shoot. Now, when it comes to the low power variable, the 1 to 6 in this case, there is just one optic, but just because you get the optic doesn't mean you're done yet and ready to go. You're going to need to make sure that you have the right rings or mount to set it up on top of your rifle. Now, much like the magnifier and red dot combo, these are most commonly seen atop AR-15s or other similar carbines, but because they're made up very similarly to other types of rifle scopes, maybe with a little bit bigger objective perhaps, but that means they can go on just about any kind of rifle, even traditional style rifles as well. So just like any other rifle scope, making sure you get the right rings or mount and going through the proper mounting procedure with that rifle scope into those rings is going to be paramount. That's the one thing connecting your optic to the gun. So that is an additional consideration in this case, whereas the red dot and magnifier simply slap right onto the top of the rifle, ready to go. Now, in terms of size and weight, let's talk about this a little bit because it can vary. Obviously, this is not one static setup. This can change out quite a lot depending on what optic you're running in front of the magnifier. In this particular case with our SPARC solar, this is a really lightweight red dot. So as it sits here, actually, this combination, magnifier and red dot, is lighter than this scope by itself. Then, of course, the scope needs a mount too, which is going to add on even a little bit more weight yet. But if we have a heavier optic in front of the magnifier here, then all that can start to even out a little bit. So again, it depends. You'll have to do a little math depending on the weight of your exact setup. Now, in terms of size and form factor atop your rifle, in this particular case with this setup that we have, you can see that it is a little bit shorter overall than the Strike Eagle. And when engaged, in terms of the magnifier being behind the red dot, they're about the same side to side. But of course, you need to consider the fact that when you want to run the red dot by itself, using essentially 1x, we have to move the magnifier over to the side, which now makes it take up more width on top of your rifle. Now, one of the added benefits, perhaps, of having a magnifier and red dot combination is that you have the ability to change the entire setup of your rifle simply by removing the magnifier or putting it back on. So in this case, if we want to run only the red dot for a very lightweight, very fast, very simple setup, we can simply just detach the magnifier and run it as is, put the magnifier back on later. Whereas when we're using something like this low power variable, it's always like this in terms of this form factor. Now, perhaps the most notable difference between these two setups is the way that they change magnification and also the magnifications available to you as the shooter. Now, which is better for you is completely a personal preference thing, and it depends on your particular application. But with the magnifier here, again, using our Micro6x behind a red dot, we kind of get 1 or 6. In this case, with the magnifier engaged, we have 6 power to view through, see our targets up more closely, and hopefully make more accurate engagements at distance. When we flip it to the side, now we have 1 power. There's nothing in between, unlike our low power variable, where we can select 1, 2, 3, 3.5, all the way up to 6. Now, when we're shooting, obviously the reticle that we're using to aim is very important, and that's something that can be quite a bit different between these two setups. When we look at this particular red dot and magnifier combination, our SPARC Solar just has a 2 MOA dot for aiming. That's great for up close and fast, and it can be just fine at mid-range as well, but that's pretty much all we're left with regardless. If we change out the optic in front, some optics that work with magnifiers can have a bit more in-depth reticles, but generally speaking, across the board, when you go to a low power variable like this 1 to 6 here, we're going to get more in-depth reticles that give us more information that we can use to shoot at greater distance. If you're considering either one of these types of optic setups, then chances are one of the things you're particularly concerned about is how they perform on 1 power. Now, when we're looking at a low power variable like this 1 to 6, really any optic that starts on 1 power, for all intents and purposes, you are getting 1 power on the lowest setting for those engagements that are up close and fast. But by nature of having to deliver you that image through a full optical system, there will be just a bit of distortion. And compared to a red dot or a holographic sight where there's going to be notably less distortion, you're just going to get a different feeling on 1 power. One of the other things to consider is eye relief. Now, when we're using a low power variable, 1 to 6 here, for example, this Strike Eagle has 3.5 inches of eye relief. That is the distance your eye needs to be from the rifle scope to be in that sweet spot to get the optimal image quality. In the case of the magnifier and red dot combination, when we're just using the red dot, we have unlimited eye relief. So very, obviously, forgiving in terms of where our head and eye is placed behind the optic. It allows us to use it very quickly and from a variety of positions without having to worry about being just in that sweet spot. But when we cam this over to be on 6 power behind the magnifier, just keep in mind that eye relief inherently in magnifiers is shorter than eye relief in other types of rifle scopes, especially 1 to 6s. So this Micro6x has about 2.5 inches of eye relief. Now, most of the time, we're going to be having these on carbines chambered in 5.56. It's not a particularly heavy recoiling rifle, so we don't have to worry about having our eye so close to the optic. So really, this should be something you take into account if you're considering putting one of these optics on a heavier recoiling rifle that's going to move more when you shoot it. So there you have it, everybody. Those are the major differences between pairing a magnifier with a red dot or holographic sight and using a low power variable like a 1 to 6. There are some mechanical differences between the two setups that could determine which you choose for your particular application, but a lot of this really comes down to personal preference. If you guys have any questions at all, we would love to hear them. You can always drop those in the comments below or hit us up via phone, email, social media, whatever works best for you. We always love hearing from you guys, and until the next time, we'll see you on the next video.